So when you think of Genesis 6, what comes to mind? The Great Flood, right? A guy named Noah, a big boat, lots of animals. But what if there's so much more going on beneath the surface? What if this story is actually a blueprint, a detailed case study of how an entire system can utterly collapse and what it takes to build a rescue mission against all odds?
I mean, just listen to that. The text is brutal. It's not just saying, oh, people were behaving badly. No, it's a diagnosis of a deep internal sickness. It's describing a complete breakdown where the very capacity to imagine goodness, to even think a good thought, had been totally corrupted. The stakes could not be higher.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to look at that terminal diagnosis. Then, we'll perform an autopsy on the collapse itself. After that, we'll zoom in on the one exception to the rule, explore the incredible architecture of the rescue plan, and finally, we'll uncover the timeless principle that holds the whole thing together.
All right, first up, the diagnosis. The way to understand this pre-flood world is to see it as a closed system. Imagine the complex machine that's been totally unplugged from its power source. What happens? It just breaks down. By cutting itself off from the source of life, this civilization was doomed to a kind of moral entropy, an unavoidable decay into chaos and violence.
The core idea we're going to use to understand this is something called ontological collapse. Now, I know, ontological is a big fancy word, but all it really means is the fundamental structure of reality itself. So this isn't just a social problem, it's a reality problem. When a society abandons the basic oughts, the foundational rules of how things are supposed to work, the whole building just comes crashing down. So we have the diagnosis. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's look at the specific symptoms of this collapse, which are laid out right there in the first few verses of the chapter.
The very first symptom, a massive breakdown of order. You see, the world of Genesis is built on distinctions, light from dark, land from sea, one kind of creature from another. These boundaries give reality its structure, but here, with the sons of God and the daughters of men, we see a catastrophic breach of one of those core boundaries. This isn't just a minor infraction, it's a structural failure at the highest possible level. It's an archetypal collapse.
So how on earth does a boundary like that get broken? Well, it happens through something called valence hijacking. Think of valence as spiritual or moral authority. The sons of God basically used their divine status, their authority, to legitimize a choice based on pure impulse. The text says they took wives of all that they chose. They hijacked their own divine weight to justify personal desire, throwing any external standard right out the window.
And the results of this boundary breaking, this hijacking of authority, we get the Nephilim. Now, it's really important to see them as more than just some mythological giants. They are the literal, physical embodiment of this ontological corruption. They are a malformation made flesh.
And this is where the system goes into a death spiral. These men of renown become the culture's heroes, its celebrities. But they're contaminated symbols. They represent power with absolutely no moral structure. And this completely corrupts the culture's story, making brute force and dominance look like the ultimate goal. That, in turn, corrupts the whole game of society, creating a system where the only way to win is through violence. It's a feedback loop of pure destruction.
This table just lays it all out perfectly, doesn't it? You can see the whole chain reaction. The actors start with an archetypical collapse. Their action is driven by pure subjective morality. The result is the malformation of the Nephilim. And the entire system devolves into a corrupted game of violence, a total systemic failure.
So that's a pretty bleak picture, right? A world in total collapse, seemingly without any hope. But the story takes this incredibly sharp turn. Right in the middle of all the decay, we find one single exception.
So, remember, we've established that the world had sealed itself off. It was a closed system, totally cut off from any outside source of truth or life. And the laws of physics and spirituality tell us the same thing. A closed system is destined to decay. It was just inevitably spiraling into chaos.
But this one word changes everything. This is maybe the most important conjunction in the entire story. But Noah found favor. This verse is the pivot. It's the moment an outside force breaks into the closed system. It's grace being injected into a world that was dying.
So what made Noah so different? Was he a superhero? Not at all. He was simply an open system. He's described as just, or tzaddik in Hebrew, which means he lived by an objective standard, not just by what was popular. He was perfect, or tamim, meaning he had structural integrity. He wasn't corrupted by the chaos, and most importantly, he walked with God. He was plugged in, connected to the source, not the decaying culture around him.
And that connection to the source is what leads to the solution. You see, the problem was systemic, so the solution had to be structural. And that's where the Ark comes in. It's presented not as some boat Noah dreamed up, but as a piece of revealed architecture, a technology specifically designed to survive an ontological collapse.
Let's look at this design, because every detail has a deep purpose. The gopher wood tells us that truth isn't flimsy, it has substance and structure. The pitch that seals it is all about boundaries, creating a shield against the chaos outside. The one door signifies that the path to safety is specific and singular. And that single window at the top, it's brilliant. It's a design that forces an upward orientation. It makes you focus on the source, not on the storm raging all around.
But you know, the physical ark is only half the picture. It's a structure built on top of a promise, the covenant. This is the bridge that connects the rescue vessel back to the source of life. The wooden pitch keeps the water out, but it's the covenant that holds the whole project together.
Okay, for our final section, let's zoom out and look at the universal principle that's at play here. Because this isn't just about an ancient flood, it's a timeless lesson about what actually holds up when everything else is falling apart.
And right here, you see the central conflict in a nutshell. On one side, you've got the world's operating principle, total willfulness. We'll take whatever we choose. On the other side, you have Noah's principle, total willingness. He did all that God commanded him. It is the ultimate showdown between subjective desire and alignment with a revealed structure.
So at the end of the day, what are the big takeaways from Genesis 6? Well, there are two. First, there's a warning. Any system, whether it's a person or a society, that's built on nothing but subjective imagination is doomed to collapse into violence. But there's also an invitation. Real survival, real stability, is found not by making it all up as we go, but by aligning ourselves with a revealed structure.
You know, the bells of collapse are kind of always ringing, aren't they? In our world, in our culture, sometimes in our own lives. And so this ancient story leaves us with a very urgent, very modern question. What ark are you building? What structures are you aligning with to find stability in the storm?